Mass data fragmentation. Anyone got that problem? An audience of one.
Audience of one? Well,
I don't think so.
Hopefully as we go through the deck today, you'll start to have a bit more of appreciation for some of the challenges that mass data fragmentation actually has within organisations. And so today is not necessarily just about positioning some of the things that can be implemented to solve mass data fragmentation, but also to highlight what the concerns and what the challenges are that mass data fragmentation presents. As I say, I'm a business strategy consultant for Iomart. We work with public sector organisations and corporate organisations up and down the land internationally with providing solutions that enable organisations to solve these solutions as well as provision cloud-based services as well. Mass data fragmentation in itself, there's a growing proliferation of data spread across organisations today. As people start to adopt more and more analytics-based tools, obviously we've been talking about cookies and the data that's scraped from website services, but also as organisations adopt cloud-based options, things like Office 365, Microsoft Azure, AWS, etc. The proliferation of data and data sprawl across an organisation's infrastructure becomes more and more challenging. Obviously yourselves as data protection specialists, compliance officers, etc., that then poses more and more of a risk and more of a challenge to the organisation in terms of being compliant, as well as putting some strangleholds on the business in terms of being able to reap value from that data as it moves forward through its digital transformation journey. So I want to start the slide today, or the deck today, really with a bit of an overview about Google. What Google did. We talk about search capability, we talk about looking for something. In our day-to-day lives outside of work, if you're looking at doing something, looking to try and find some data, Google, or the acronym Google is very much synonymous with searching for information. So Google in themselves have very much enabled the fragmentation of data at a consumer level internationally and across multiple locations, multiple websites, wherever it might be, to bring that data together and enable it to become searchable, identifiable, to be able to reap value from that data. If you want to find something, you go on Google, you type in the search of whatever you're looking for, and it brings that data up, enables you to find it very, very quickly. Google, alongside that, internally also have an analytics platforms they utilise, which obviously we're talking about today, the analytics that are being available on websites, etc. But from that, on top of that, they also have an application marketplace that enables people to then build applications and to use that data for whatever reason it is that they might be. Obviously, from a compliance point of view, that then adds more and more challenges, as we all know. So just wanted to put that as a thought process of what's happened in the consumer market in terms of consumer data to begin with, and just hold that thought as we then go through these next few slides, and I'll sort of come back to that a little bit later on. So the challenge within organisations, enterprise organisations, whether it be public or corporate sector organisations, internally within their own IT systems, within their own data storage platforms, etc., is huge around the amount of different solutions and service offerings that you have internally to deliver just the business as usual operations of the business for running applications internally, or delivering services out to customers as well. Now, I do have 2 or 3 other slides of this, but I thought this one probably helps to explain the scale of the challenge that people see, and hopefully everyone in this room will sort of recognise this, that you've got different data centres running different backup services, recovery services, file services, running test and dev and long-term archiving of data, and all the analytics that are scraped from websites, etc., etc., etc. All of that data, it's huge amounts of data that are getting consumed. IoT devices that are coming out, pulling more and more data and bringing all that back. And there's multiple copies of this data, and there's lots and lots of sprawl of data left, right, and centre. You then add in the cloud platforms that are now becoming more prevalent in the market. The adoption of cloud services is skyrocketing, as I'm sure everyone in the audience today is aware. As I say, the adoption of Google G Suite, Office 365, Azure, or AWS, it's becoming more and more prevalent. And it's just adding on additional complexity and additional fragmentation of the data sets that organisations typically had when it was all on-premise. They're now adding in more complexity because you're adding in more and more silos in which that data can now reside. So let's add some context to this. We work, but before I do, quick show of hands. And this sort of refers back to that initial question that was asked before. Can anyone in here, or let me have a show of hands, the amount of people that can hand on heart say they know how many copies of data they have within their organisation? Anyone? Anyone anywhere? No? Good. That's exactly what I see every single time I do this presentation. No one has a handle on the amount of data they've got, because why? It's so complex, all the silos that you have, multiple copies of data that you have, therefore being compliant. How easy is it to be compliant when people have got subject access requests, right to be forgotten, etc., etc., etc. Almost impossible, because you can't say, I know what data I've got and where it is. So we work with Kisi, a new vendor in the market, very disruptive technology, and I'll come on to what it does in a little while. But Kisi commissioned a study of organisations with $10 billion revenues and above to look at what the perception is across CIOs globally around what these challenges are of multiple copies of data, the fragmentation of data, and multiple silos of data that, where it resides today. So, of the respondents, of the 100 respondents we have, 87% said that secondary data fragmented is becoming almost impossible to manage. How many in this room would disagree with that? 13%. Sorry? 13%. How many in the room today would disagree with that? No. Okay. Good. So we're 100% in here. Brilliant. 35%, more than a third of organisations, there's 6 or more solutions are required internally within their business to manage secondary data. So secondary data, not the stuff that sits in your primary storage, but across all your analytics platforms, your long-term archives, your backups, your test dev services, your disaster recovery. You know, there are multiple solutions in there. And that's one of the reasons why knowing how many copies of your data you've got is impossible to know, because you've got so many different solutions doing the same things in lots of different areas. 63% of organisations reckon they have between 4 and 15 copies of the same pieces of data. It's an incredible figure. And 10% reckon they've got 11 or more copies. 85% of organisations say that they've got copies of the data stored across 2 to 5 public cloud environments, plus their on-premise environments. So, this is real world. Hopefully this is reflecting, what you guys are seeing within your own organisations as it stands today. So what are the consequences of this? On average, people were estimating that it's taken them an additional 16 weeks of time of manpower to manage this time, and that's cost, that's complexity within the business, unless they've got more effective tools available. Now, if we come back to the GDPR regulations, the legislation is actually written quite cleverly, in that it says that you need to be compliant for subject access requests, rights to be forgotten, etc., that you need to have reasonable endeavours put in place about the solutions that are available, common marketplace available to you, to be able to find that data and bring it back when there's a subject access request, right to be forgotten. Now, historically, those tools haven't been available. Therefore, retrieving data out of your production systems is normally where people will look, or out of your email or whatever it might be. Now, there are solutions that are coming to market, which will come on in a minute, which are meaning now that the ICO will take a different view as to whether you are compliant if someone comes to you and asks you to find data and you don't respond with the data that's available across your organisation, wherever that data sits. So that change is happening. Kisi Platform we're working with, disrupting that market and enabling the visibility of this data to become alive. So it might not be something that people are aware of right now, and that's why it was good that only one person put the hand up earlier, because it's a latent issue that people aren't necessarily aware of, but it's becoming more and more visible to people. Now, 91% of organisations were concerned about the level of visibility of the data across the data centres and their infrastructure. And this is C-level. So obviously as data protection officers, compliance officers, I'm sure you're aware of it, but this should be very much aware at your C-level as well. So just some key challenges that this then presents to organisations. Obviously we know the ones we talked about in terms of GDPR compliance, what you guys deal with day in, day out. But there's also pressures that mounts on the IT budget, this disadvantage competitively between yourselves and other organisations, even right down to people in the teams internally in terms of staff retention, because of the amount of pressure that's going to be on them in terms of trying to manage this data that's sat within the organisation. So, on the flip side, positive side, what could be the rewards? Of those surveyed, 20% thought they could put on 6 to 8% increase on their turnover annually if they can manage their data everywhere effectively. Now, if you think about that, this is $10 billion businesses. You add on 8%, that's a big uptick in terms of that ability to earn money from data. So what if we could bring Google principle to the enterprise? Well, Kisi have done exactly that. So if you think about the slide that we showed at the beginning, about how Google does it, in terms of having a platform that brings all that data together, that runs analytics across it, and then enables you to create applications that you can then drive intelligence and insight into that data. That's what Kisi are doing. So the guy who founded Kisi, a gentleman by the name of Mo Aaron, used to be the lead file engineer at Google. And Google have invested into Kisi. So their principle and their mantra is to bring that same Google-like capability that's available in consumer data in the public realm internally into enterprises to enable them to do all the things they wish they could do but haven't got the tools to do it today. So it's a clean sheet that their approach that they're taking to the old problem of all this data fragmentation. So what they've tried to create is a platform that is eminently globally scalable, that provides lots of different services all under the one roof, and effectively creates a data platform for you to be able to enable you to do what you need to do, to search for data, to apply analytics to it, to become compliant with GDPR regulations, freedom of information requests, etc. Has unified global management tools that enable different levels of the organisation to see different granularity. So you can get management reporting at a global level and then down into the individual countries, territories, and down into DPOs, and et cetera, et cetera. You can also download applications from the marketplace. Now, I'll come back to this point in a second, but basically what happens with the platform, when you ingest data into it, it indexes everything. Not just the file name, not just the virtual machine that it might sit on, from those who are technically in the audience, but also all of the data that sits within every single file. So as an example, Visa, customer of Kisi's, they use it in the context of, all I've got is a credit card number, and I want to find every single piece of data that sits across globally, wherever it sits. You can do a quick search, and it will tell you every single location that data sits in, almost instantaneously. So you think the power of that when it comes to right to be forgotten, freedom of information requests, subject access requests, and that's just the compliance side of things, let alone then what you can then do with that to enable you to drive business value from that data as well. It's hugely, hugely powerful. With many organisations we're speaking to now that are very much looking exactly at this at the moment to say, actually, this is a way that we can now consolidate what we have and enable us to be ready for the future. So under the hood of the Kisi platform, there are many services that it also runs. It's not just a platform where you can search for data. It's not an e-discovery tool all on its own. It also provides other different services. So you can use it to back up your data globally. So rather than having another platform that backs everything up, that has a server and a storage target and some software that does it all, you can just run it straight off the platform. So you can back everything up, and then anything that's backed up, you can then search against and do what you want to and restore that data. You can use it to run DR as a service. You can use it to store files and objects in as well. So you can put all your file data straight onto the platform, and it then becomes imminently searchable and indexed straight away. Also, you can run test dev services from it. So one of the biggest things when people say, right to be forgotten, freedom of information request, what data have we got, they forget that the IT team are there standing up test dev services, clones of that data elsewhere that you've not got access to, that you're not able to search and you're not able to find. You can run them directly off the platform, and therefore minimising that sprawl of the data that's happening across the infrastructure. And you can also use it for long-term archive, whether that be on the platform or kicked out into one of the public cloud platforms, but still indexed and still with that visibility of the data right across the board. So, in summary, effectively, we run this as a service. We're the only global service provider within EMEA that takes Kisi out to market. So we're very strategically aligned with them. And effectively, these challenges that some of you hopefully will now be a little bit more enlightened of the challenges that are around, you can reflect to, and you can see that those challenges are there, and it's going to become more and more challenging as the sprawl of data happens, that there is now an opportunity for you to be in early and start to look at planning and how you can adopt these types of solutions into your business. It's not going to be an overnight thing. It will take time for it to happen because you've got legacy systems that are already in place, but there is a time and a process and a modular take on the service you're able to do to, over a period of time, enable you to become compliant holistically across the board, whether that be over 3 years, 5 years, whatever else it might be. We have got a copy of the case study, of the study, the market study, available on our website. So you feel free to absolutely go along and download. We've also got our team from Kisi here outside. Availability of a rolling demo of the platform if anyone really wants to have a look and see what it can do and how that search capability works. Or we're more than happy to set up meetings and discussions on the back end. So hopefully that's been a bit enlightening for you of not just the challenges, but also what's now available in the market as well. So if anyone's got any questions, feel free. Absolutely happy to answer any that anyone might have.
I've got one key question to ask. No? Okay. Oh.
Oh, bless you.
Hi, I was just wondering with the search facility and the scanning and stuff, it'll help with issues around unstructured data.
So yeah, so if you think about unstructured and dark data, the reason it's unstructured and it's dark is because nothing's indexed. So when you use the platform to either use it to back up that data or in disaster recovery mode or whatever it is, all of that data is indexed as it's ingested into the platform. So it becomes, rather than unstructured and dark, it becomes live and visible straight away. Yeah, it is. It's absolutely fantastic.
Okay, I think we'll draw an end there. I just want to thank David.
John?
John.